And then it happened, Book 7, Chapter 9, The Pet Napper. It was summer, and everyone in town was talking about the latest rash of crimes. In the past 3 weeks, 7 people had reported having their pets kidnapped and held for ransom. The police were at a loss to solve the crimes. They had no clue who the criminal might be or when he would strike next. No pet was safe, and in order to ensure that the pet owners paid the ransom, along with the note came a terrifying picture of the pet. One kid from our class had his goldfish stolen out of his room when he was away at camp. When he returned home, he found the ransom note. Attached to the note was a picture of his fish swimming in a toilet bowl. A man's hairy hand wearing a large diamond ring had one finger on the flusher, warning what would happen if the ransom wasn't paid. An elderly lady down the street had her budgie stolen from its cage. A few days later, a ransom note came in the mail along with a picture of her bird in a cage. Inches away from the cage sat a fat cat licking its chops. Even large animals weren't safe. At a farm across from Paulo's, a horse disappeared. When the ransom note arrived, it was accompanied by a picture of the hairy hand with the diamond ring holding up a bottle of glue. Everyone quickly paid the ransom to get back their beloved pets. The police had been working on the case day and night for 3 weeks, but so far the only clue they had was that the pet napper had a hairy hand and wore a diamond ring. They had checked everyone in town with hairy hands and had found no one wearing a large diamond ring. Since they had no other clues, they decided to offer a reward to anyone who would catch the pet napper. A large reward. $500. Gordon, Paul, and I would have gladly turned the pet napper in for free had we known who he was, but with a $500 reward being offered, we were now very determined to catch the person kidnapping innocent pets. A couple of days later, while watching TV at Gordon's house, our favourite show was interrupted by a news bulletin. Another pet had been kidnapped, this time a dog. The dog was described as a small black dog with a short tail, last seen wearing a red collar. The dog answered to the name Buttons, and the owner was an elderly man living on Grey Street. "Grey Street?" shouted Gordon. "That's the dog we were hired to walk." "The poor old guy who owns Buttons must be worried sick," said Paulo. "I'll bet Buttons is pretty scared too," I added. "What we need to do," said Gordon, "is look for a man with hairy hands wearing a big diamond ring." "But the police have already searched the entire town for a hairy-handed man with diamond rings. They found lots of hairy hands, but none with diamond rings," Paul reminded him. "I'll bet that is because the pet napper doesn't wear his diamond ring in public. He only wears it at home, which is where he takes all the pictures," insisted Gordon. "I'll bet he keeps his curtains closed too, so no one sees him wearing his ring. And he must have a high fence around his yard so no one can see in," I added. "Let's get on our bikes and ride up and down every street in town," said Gordon. "We'll check out the houses with high fences and see if they also have their curtains drawn." Paul and I thought it was a great idea, and the 3 of us hopped on our bikes and began riding up and down every street. "We're almost done," announced Paulo after we'd been riding for over 2 hours. "The last street left is Green Street." "Hey," chuckled Gordon, "that's the street that Sledgehammer lives on. That's one dog that will never be kidnapped." We turned our bikes onto Green Street and rode past the grey house where Sledgehammer lived. The curtains were wide open, and the only fence was a short chain-link one around the backyard. We continued up the street, and when we got to the very last house, we stopped and stared at it. The curtains were drawn tight, and there was a tall wooden fence around the entire yard. "Well, well, well," said Gordon. "What have we here?" "Listen," said Paulo. We could all hear soft music coming from the backyard. Somebody's home. Let's knock on the door and see if a man with hairy hands answers. Then we can tell the cops and collect our reward, said Gordon. We left our bikes at the foot of the driveway and walked to the front door. Paulo rang the bell. There was no answer, so he knocked on the door. Still no one answered. We walked back to our bikes. Well, I said, I guess we should go to the police anyway and tell them to check this place out. No, said Gordon. They would laugh us right out of the police station. We need more evidence. We can't ask them to search a house just because it has a high fence and the curtains are drawn. What we need is some solid proof that the pet napper lives here. Right, agreed Paulo. Somehow we have to see if a man with hairy hands lives here, and if so, we need to find out if he's wearing a big diamond ring. Then we can go to the police. And collect our reward, added Gordon with a grin. I'm going to climb that tree beside the fence to spy on the backyard. You guys wait here and cover me. As quietly as possible, Gordon climbed the tall tree and quickly disappeared amongst the leaves. A moment later, he whispered loudly, Guys, get up here, quick! Paul and I scampered up the tree. Silently, Gordon pointed to a man in the backyard. He was lying on a lounge chair beside a pool with his eyes closed, half asleep, and on his hairy hand glistened in the sun was a large diamond ring. Lying under the lounge chair, tied by a leash, was Buttons, the dog. Great, whispered Paulo. Let's get down from here and go get the police. No, argued Gordon. We have to rescue Buttons first, then we'll call the cops. I've got a plan. Paul and I looked at each other, but we knew it was useless to argue with Gordon when he had a plan. Okay, sighed Paulo. Let's hear it. Okay, I've been watching this guy, and every couple of minutes he drops his hand and pats Buttons on the head. Then Buttons licks the guy's hand, and he folds his arms across his chest again and goes back to sleep. That gives us about 2 minutes between pats to sneak through the gate and rescue Buttons. Paul and I watched, and sure enough, in a couple of minutes, the man reached down with his hairy hand and patted Buttons on the head. The dog licked the man's hands, and then he folded them across his chest again. See, said Gordon, that gives us 2 minutes to rescue Buttons. By the time the hairy guy figures out what happened, we'll be out of sight and have Buttons halfway home by then. I wasn't crazy about the idea, but I couldn't think of a better one, so we agreed to give it a try. After all, what's the worst thing that could have happened? Paulo stayed in the tree watching the pet napper in order to give Gordon a signal. When he raised his thumbs, Gordon and I would sneak into the backyard. A few minutes later, Paulo gave the thumbs up signal, and Gordon and I slowly opened the gate and crawled on our bellies toward the sleeping man. Slithering under the lounge chair, Gordon quickly undid the leash, and I snatched the little dog. And then it happened. Before I could put my hand over the dog's muzzle to keep him from barking and giving us away, Buttons let out a little whimper. The pet napper's hand came down to give him a reassuring pat on the head, but I had already started back across the yard with Buttons held tightly in my arms. So, thinking fast, Gordon shoved his head under the man's hairy hand. The pet napper patted Gordon on the head. Then the man held his hand down, waiting for it to be licked. Closing his eyes and grimacing, Gordon licked the man's hairy hand. Ugh. Reassured that all was okay, the pet napper folded his arms across his chest and dozed off. Gordon crawled back to the gate where I waited with Buttons. Just as Gordon was closing the gate, the wind caught it, and it shut with a loud bang. Instantly, the pet napper was awake and on his feet. Go! Shouted Gordon, and we started to run with the little dog tucked safely under my arm. Stealing a quick glance behind me, I could see the pet napper in hot pursuit. For a big, hairy man, he could really run. Follow me! Shouted Gordon, heading down Green Street and toward the familiar grey house where Sledgehammer, the beast we had mistakenly walked, lived. Would we make it in time? The pet napper was only a house length behind us and gaining quickly. At last, we got to Sledgehammer's house. Paul was waiting on the front porch. In his hand was the key that we knew was kept hidden in the mailbox. As Gordon and I charged across the lawn with Buttons, Paulo stuck the key in the door and turned the handle. Gordon, Paul, and I burst into the house. As expected, Sledgehammer was sleeping in the basement. When he heard the commotion, he charged upstairs, snapping and growling. By the time he reached the top of the stairs, we had already run through the house and slammed the back door shut behind us. Peeking through the back window of the house, we watched the pet napper burst through the front door in hot pursuit. Get out of my way, mutt! bellowed the pet napper foolishly as he kicked at Sledgehammer. The dog effortlessly caught the kicking foot in his mouth and bit down hard. The pet napper roared in pain. He was big and strong, but he was no match for Sledgehammer, who kept attacking till at last the pet napper tore free and dove into the bedroom, slamming the door shut in Sledgehammer's face. The dog continued to bark and growl at the closed door, trapping the man inside. Gordon, Paul, and I grinned at each other. We had saved Buttons and trapped the pet napper. Now all we had to do was return Buttons to his owner, call the police, and collect our reward. No one was home when we arrived at Buttons' house, so we carefully dropped the little dog into the fenced backyard. We headed back to Green Street, where we would phone the police from a neighbour's house. To our surprise, when we got there, 3 police cars were already there with their lights flashing. The pet napper was being led away in handcuffs, his diamond ring sparkling in the sun. We heard Sledgehammer's owner talking to the police. It's just like I told you, officer. I came home from work and found my front door open. I noticed a torn green shirt in my dog's mouth. I found a large man cowering under my bed, crying, "Keep your dog away!" So I called 911. Well, the police officer said, I guess the $500 reward is yours. I hope you and Sledgehammer enjoy it. You're both heroes. Thanks for helping us catch the pet napper. End of chapter.